Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the April NOACC Chamber Focus Series event. My name is Cindy Holzheimer, and I am the President CEO of the Northern Ohio Area Chambers of Commerce. So we're very excited to have you with us this morning. I would like to recognize our board of directors who are with us today. We have our board chair, Missy McWhorter. Our vice chair is Greg Church. Our treasurer is Tony Gallo. We also on our board, we have Tim Anstead. He's with Perrysburg. Dan Franks with Orville. I know I saw Dan on here. Claudia Mochu with Middleburg and Mike Wine with Green. I know he's on here as well. So just a couple of really quick announcements. I figure we'll do these at the beginning today. So just a reminder, our upcoming Bright Star Summit Series events. The next one will be June 21st. That is going to be in Lima, and we'll be focusing on advocacy and ambassador groups. So more to come on that. Registration will open over the weekend. Everyone will get an email about that and how to register for that event. Also, save the date. Why isn't this moving here? Here we go. Save the date for the 16th annual Bright Star Annual Awards Program. The official save the dates, emails, and all of that great stuff will be going out hopefully next week. This year's event will be on October 10th and will be at the Military Aviation Preservation Society for us in the area, actually known as MAPS, and that is in North Canton and is actually on the opposite side of the Akron-Canton Airport. So that will be coming up in October. The next Chamber Focus Series event is going to be May 17th. And that's going to be at 11 a.m., just like this one. We're going to welcome Sarah Gray. She is with United Networks of America, and that is the NOACC prescription savings programs. She is coming on to kind of give us some updates about the program, how you can get more involved, is your chamber signed up, how do I make sure my website looks right, all that really great stuff. So she is going to come on and give us any of those updates. We're excited to have her next May. So this morning, our focus series, we're going to be looking at two programs through the U.S. Chamber Foundation. One is the Employer Provided Innovation Challenges, which is EPIC. We live in a world of acronyms as well. And then Talent Pipeline Management. So I believe that's just what they call that too. So everything is an acronym. And I'm excited I get to introduce our speakers today. So Sarah Castro serves as an executive director of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. She works on projects with the foundation's workforce portfolio, which is dedicated to pursuing solutions to ensure learners and workers have the right skills and experience for the jobs of today and tomorrow, and that the economy has the right workforce it needs to compete and grow. Castro manages several initiatives that are focused on employer-led partnerships and innovative financing. She received an MBA from Georgetown and a BA from the College of Worcester. Nikki Da Silva is Senior Director at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, and she leads the Talent Pipeline Management Initiative, focusing on building strong workforce ecosystems. She transformed the TPM Academy into the TPM CoLab TPM platform, which I'm sure she's going to talk about, and teaches at the TPM Academy and at Institute for Organization Management, or IOM. Previously, Nikki was a legislative assistant in Indiana, instrumental in state budget crafting. She holds advisory roles in various organizations and graduated from TFAS and ILF. Again, a lot of these acronyms. Nikki earned a BA in science from IUPUI and pursued an MBA MS in global supply chain management from Indiana University. Very, very accomplished. Beyond, Nikki enjoys creating pastries and engaging adventurous activities like skydiving, scuba diving, and snowboarding, which is really amazing. So as we move into our presentation this morning, I'm going to go ahead and stop Sarah's share so you can bring up your presentation. If you have any questions as we're moving along, go ahead and throw those in the chat. If it's something they can talk about during the presentation, they will. If not, we're going to hold it to a question and answer session towards the end. So we are very excited for today's programming. So Nikki, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much for that introduction, Cindy. And good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be with you. As mentioned, I'm Nikki Silva with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, and I'm going to talk to you about talent pipeline management. Most of the time from here on out, I'll refer to it as TPM, but no, we're talking about the same thing. So I thought to start today, we would have a little story time. So our fresh, right? One of their energy companies was dealing with a pretty big challenge. They have quite a few people who would be eligible for retirement in the next few years, and they needed to fill 100 gas and electrical line positions. On top of that, what they recognized is that they were spending almost $30,000 per new hire in what would be considered level 0 onboarding or almost a remediation of some of the skills and competencies that were necessary for those roles. So they posted the 100 electrical and gas line positions. They received 4,000 applications. Does anybody want to guess how many of the 4,000 applicants were actually qualified for the job? You just unmute yourself and give a guess.
50.
That was right on, actually. 50 of 4,000. That's not a very large pool from how many applied. And so that was a wake-up call to them that maybe there was a huge disconnect in the way in which they were kind of expressing or signaling what the job was versus how people were interpreting it, and maybe even a mismatch in the skills of what are being taught in the programs that are available and what is actually needed in the field. So through this, they participated in the TPM framework. They utilized it to kind of identify their most critical jobs, the skills that are needed, et cetera, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But they were able to fill all 100 of those positions, education and training partners, and they were able to realign the curriculum for the existing programs. So they actually reduced the number of weeks for the program, and they were able to eliminate that kind of level 0 onboarding that people were having to go through once they were hired onto the job. Another component that they worked with other energy companies within Michigan and the state and their education partners was having energy classified as a 17 cluster for the state. So probably you all kind of know what that means, right? Now, energy was being thought of as an industry much earlier on, and there was additional supports available for that for people to get kind of engaged in that particular sector. Pretty big win for consumers' energy, I think, just by being able to really look at their data. So I wanted to start with that just to give you guys kind of a little bit of an example of what TPM can do and kind of where it can depending on what you're trying to work on. So what is talent pipeline management? Well, it is a framework built on supply chain management, something that employers and businesses are pretty familiar with. I always like to use the Tesla example of if I were going to buy a Tesla, I might go on Tesla's website and tell them exactly what model I want, what color I want it to be, what features I would like it to have, where it needs to be delivered, when I want it, right? And all that information goes to the very beginning of their supply chain, right? What materials do they need to have? How are they going to get it to the right people for production? How is it going to be distributed to me? What are they going to sell it to me at, right? All of that information, and it's all based on the end customer specifications. And so in TPM, we think about the employer as the end customer in a supply chain of talent. Not necessarily saying that workers and learners are widgets, but that there's something to be said that when employers can truly understand what their greatest pain points are, what are the skills and competencies people need to be successful in those roles, and how to effectively communicate that, both to workers and learners and to education and training providers, they can respond more effectively with aligned experiences of value that ensure that people are prepared for the work ahead of them, right? So you see at the very bottom of this slide, there's what we call line of sight to a good job. And I actually stole them from one of our practitioners, Peter Beard. He had put the bottom graphic in a presentation. I was like, oh, that's a really great way to kind of show what we're trying to do here is really align all of our partners within a supply chain and create a communication loop. In many instances, employers are not necessarily asked for this type of information on the front end when programs are being created, fees are being created, or funding is moving through into different program areas So how can we both develop a common language for employers and their workforce partners and education partners? And how can we ensure that all of the resources and incentives along that supply chain are aligned for the most effective outcome? So how do we teach people this? And I'll get further into the framework here in just a moment, is through what we call our talent pipeline management academies. So TPM kind of started as a white paper 10 years ago this year, so in 2014. And that concept was then piloted in 7 states, one of which was actually Ohio was somewhat involved in that. And we did actually host the TPM Academy in Ohio back in 2021, I believe. But since then, we've been able to develop this academy where people can be trained in the methodology and become practitioners, talent supply chain managers and practitioners. So we have, I think, closer to about 1,000 people who've been trained in methodology so far across 46 states, and I believe we're up to 33 cohorts now. So you have lots of friends across the US and internationally as well, who are utilizing this framework to help address their workforce problems, and are always ready and willing to answer any could be helpful along the way. I include this slide in here because this particular quote with me all the time. We had one of our practitioners from Michigan, actually, he said in one of our committee meetings, he's like, "You don't see manufacturers sticking steel wanted signs on their front door and expecting somebody to just drop 2 tons of steel off the next day. But we do that with hiring all the time, right? You put a help wanted sign in your front door, you post a job description, maybe that you copied from the last time you hired somebody for this role 5 years ago, and just expect that you're going to get the right talent in the door. We don't do that with any other component of our business operations. Why would we do that with talent? So it's kind of that way of shifting our thinking of how we can be more strategic with our strategy, and particularly in kind of the labor market that we are in currently. So just a couple of the outcomes that you can see from TPM, and I talked a little bit about it already, is we see people reducing and employers reducing their overall costs, increasing their retention and productivity, the opportunities for career advancement and upskilling. If the pain point might be workforce diversity or access, how do you kind of build that in to your workforce strategy? And developing stronger partnerships. I think one of the things that makes TPM different from other workforce initiatives is the focus on it being employer-led and data-driven. So it's all based on employers' granular data that they're putting in for their particular critical jobs in their region. And that really allows it to become something that's more actionable at a local level. If you have questions along the way, because I am going to be getting into more of the methodology here, please feel free to pop your questions in the chat, and we'll make sure to answer them towards the end. But what is TPM and kind of how do we use it? So TPM is made up of 6 strategies. They're ordered in kind of 0 as our orientation through strategy 6. And that's typically how, but they're kind of main components that we're trying to get out. The first is getting organized. The second is getting our facts straight. So that's doing our homework, getting all of our data collected. Then we want to think about how we're actually, implementing it, and then developing our improvement strategy based on the measurements that we've put in place for those particular solutions. So as I mentioned, strategies 0 and 1 are our getting organized phases. And this is really where we're starting to determine what are the pain points. So for employers, it's thinking, what's keeping you up at night, right? What can you not, what can you not move forward to be successful in your business without doing this thing or fixing this problem? And where will the efforts be focused? A good example of this is in Kentucky. Prior to 2016, 17, I believe, the Kentucky Workforce Center was really a workforce center of one. They had their fearless leader, Beth Davison, who recognized that there was a bit of a problem, a challenge in Kentucky, where there was quite a bit of just disjointed or siloed efforts happening in the workforce space, which I'm sure you all have experienced at some point in your careers. You have a lot of people who want to work on these issues, but everybody kind of wants to do it on their own, in their own way. And that it can sometimes lead to ineffective outcomes when we can be greater if we work together. So they recognize that they had a pretty significant with businesses struggling to find qualified hires. And their goal was to create 20 employer collaboratives focused on 60 critical jobs across the state that were identified by their employer partners. By going through the TPM process, they were able to actually develop 28 employer collaboratives with over 200 employers active in those collaboratives. And they've seen tremendous success participating in this and being able to coordinate their efforts across the state at regional and local levels. So they have been able to secure funding across several different governors and administrations. They have been able to utilize the employer data that they get from these industry collaborative groups back into their state labor market information system, right? So if you think about the way of how we're validating the data that the state is using to make decisions on things, whether that's funding decisions or others, that's now being influenced by employers in the state directly every 1 to 2 years versus typically when data is at a 5 to 10 year range. So there are a lot of benefits to getting organized in that way. The next piece of this, and I kind of alluded to it a little bit, is the getting your facts straight. So the data collection component of the TPM framework. So in this, what we're really trying to understand, the questions we want to ask are, how many people do we need and in what jobs? Where do we need them? When do we need them? And maybe why do we need them? And so in TPM, we're really trying to look at the aggregate level for a particular industry or critical job group, and see where the most need is. One thing that we look at is not necessarily that mass does not equal criticality. So sometimes when we look at labor market information, we say, oh, well, there's 500 positions open for this one job. Well, you might need 500 electricians, but if you don't have the 10 superintendents for the construction job, it might not matter if you have all 500 electricians because they can't actually do the work on the job site, or they can't take on that particular project because they don't have the superintendent to run the job. So thinking about what are the most critical jobs, and this helps both in looking at what are those critical jobs and how are we prioritizing the needs for them. So on top of looking at how many people, where do we need them and when, we're also thinking about what are the skills and competencies that those people need to be successful in those roles, and how are we communicating them. When we started, we talked about the Consumers Energy example where you had 4,000 people who applied for a job and only 50 being qualified. And part of that was through there being a miscommunication and the skills and competencies needed to be successful in that role. So this gives you an opportunity to really think about what are the most critical skills and competencies that are needed, and how do we create a common language on how we describe what those skills, competencies, and experiences are, so that we can help education and training providers better align curriculum and training to the workforce needs. The last piece of the kind of the doing your homework is thinking about where we're getting our best talent from, and who are our partners that we're working with in our talent network currently, and who's not at the table that should. When we're thinking about particularly workforce diversity or untapped talent, who are some of the other potential talent providers that we haven't been working with that we should be able to with in order to meet our needs? And how can we help support our existing challenges in either getting more people into those programs or making those programs more effective? How am I doing on time, Cindy? Good? Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Great. I'll share one more example and then I'll wrap up and turn it over to Sarah. So just an example of how being able to work together and develop solutions with your education and training providers can be successful is in San Diego. So the San Diego Economic Development Corporation, or San Diego EDC, got some funding from Morgan Chase to do an analysis on what's kind of happening in the greater San Diego region. That also includes Imperial and East counties, which have a slightly different socioeconomic status and demographic than San Diego proper. But what they recognize is if they looked at their populations in their K through 12 education system, their community college system, and then into their four-year institutions or economy, which is what they call their kind of high wage, high demand jobs fit into the innovation economy. So you can think technology, sciences, defenses, all of those jobs. Latinx and Hispanics made up about 44% of the K through 12. When you got into the community college demographic and into the four-year institutions and innovation economies, there were very stark drops, that by the time you got to San Diego region, they were only represented at 10%. So they wanted to figure out why was this happening? Why was there such a gap between who actually lives in this community and who has access to kind of the good jobs, the quality jobs within that region. On top of that, because these employers were not being able to find their talent, they were also paying to relocate employees to the area. And that was not really meeting their needs. They still had about 7,000 new software jobs in the next few years that they needed to hire for. They worked on getting some additional funding to develop a new program through JP Morgan Chase that would provide support, wraparound supports to underrepresented students to ensure that they had the tools to be successful in making that bridge from the K through 12 system into the community college system or into a four-year institution, depending on the role. They also went back and looked at their job descriptions and the requirements they had around it, particularly in software development and tech. A four-year degree is not always necessary, right? I'm sure we've all heard of the boot camps or other certifications and experience on the job that can allow someone to have the skills and competencies that are necessary for those roles. And one of the ways in which they were able to really help develop different programs or industry recognized credentials was by creating what they call a verified provider program. And that is a way in which education partners are actually asking to partner with employers to co-design or develop solutions that work specifically for those employers' needs. And so I believe they have close to 50 verified programs across their different industry collaboratives that are helping kind of redesign what that looks like. So those are pretty strong partnerships between the employers and the educators, and being able to actually ensure that the coursework is relevant and that employers are going to recognize that when somebody goes to apply for a job as something of value for them to be in that role. So that was a kind of quick example of thinking about who's in our talent, our kind of network and strategy 4, but also what it can look like when you start to co-design your solutions in strategy 5. So strategy 5 is all about kind of where do we get who is part of that network, and then how are we working together with them to co-design solutions, but also how are we going to measure the success of those. So what performance metrics are we going to put in place to ensure that we are not just kind of sticking spaghetti on the wall or throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks, but really thinking about what are our goals for these particular solutions we're putting in place, and how can we improve upon them if they're not kind of meeting the mark where we want to be. So very quickly, this is one of my favorite graphics in TPM. We call this our value stream map. And I think by another name that a lot of people know, you can think of it as a career pathway, right? We're all familiar with pathways, but really this is just showing that you can see across the top that we have in blue the supplier responsibility, in green the employer responsibility, and they don't really stop, right? Everybody, we have shared responsibility along the continuum of somebody's journey, whether it's in career awareness or exploration, all the way into upskilling and retention. And so it's how do we ensure that there's that shared responsibility across the continuum, and also aligning the resources into the right kind of point along that journey to be most effective. And I have examples of that as well that I can share if anybody's interested after this as a follow-up. But I just wanted to point out that this is kind of where we see, or our vision for how this works best, is by really being able to coordinate those efforts and streamline the supply chain. I already talked about this, so I will spare you all additional content on that. But at this time, I'll turn it over to Sarah, and happy to answer any questions at the end or if you pop them in the chat. Thank you.
Thanks, Nikki. Hi, everyone. Give me 1 second to pull my screen up. Hold on. It's not working. Hold on. Give me 1 second. Nikki and Cindy watched me go through this earlier.
Good. Technology, sometimes it's
I know it
your
goes
friend.
it's Friday.
You're doing great, Sarah.
Thank you.
I don't think I breathed once during that presentation.
Hold on.
I do that too. I'll bring up a screen. Yep, nope. Now everybody wants to read my emails. It's always hard to see which one when you have like a zillion options.
Do you have 2 screens, Sarah?
I don't. Okay, give me one more chance, and then
You are fine.
if it doesn't work, I will figure something else out. Let's
You
see.
can send it to me too if you want, and I'll pull it up for you.
Oh, that's actually okay. There it is. But hold on 1 second. Okay, I'm gonna try once more, and if it doesn't work, there we go. Okay,
Yay!
thanks everyone. That was stressful. Okay, well, hello everyone. Thanks so much for having me and Nikki here today. My name is Sarah Castro, and I serve as an executive director of programs at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, and I'm based in Washington, D.C. I will say, though, that I am a native Ohioan, and I was born and raised in Cleveland, and then went on to the College of Worcester until I moved to DC. So I was very excited to get the chance to come talk to this group today. So I am here to talk to you about one of the Chamber Foundation's newer workforce initiatives, which is called EPIC, which stands for Employer Provided Innovation Challenges. And as you're listening to this presentation, I would like to invite you to think about how your chamber might partner with the Chamber Foundation on this initiative, because we are actually currently recruiting chambers of commerce and business associations and other employer-facing groups to join us and partner with us on EPIC. So just as I'm going through this presentation, know that we are in full recruitment mode and we're looking for additional chambers to join us in this initiative. So what is EPIC? As I mentioned, EPIC stands for Employer Provided Innovation Challenges. And what EPIC is really working to do is to scale work-based learning experiences for learners across the country. We are doing that through a network of what we're calling clearinghouses or host organizations. And we're all working on this with a shared infrastructure, which is basically a technology platform which the Chamber Foundation will provide. We received funding for a 3-year pilot of EPIC, and we received that funding from American Student Assistance in the Boston area, as well as the Walton Family Foundation. And we are wrapping up year 1 of that 3-year pilot. And so basically this pilot program is working to provide authentic employer-led project-based learning experiences, which will support career awareness and career preparation for high school students and for post-secondary learners. Those can be learners at community colleges or universities in your area, technical schools, places like that. And as I mentioned, we're wrapping up year 1, so we have 2 more years ahead of us, and we're looking to expand the program and recruit more partners. Before I get into really kind of what EPIC looks like and how the program is set up, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Chamber Foundation's interest in project-based or work-based learning. We are really big fans of this type of learning because we really feel that authentic, employer-led, project-based learning is a very powerful learning experience that supports career awareness, career preparation, and career development for high school and college students. We see these as high impact, formative experiences for learners, but we've really found that there are too few of these opportunities available for students. And where they are available, they're really not accessible for underrepresented or lower income or rural learners. But these experiences are important for all learners. So we really want all learners to have access to these experiences. When a learner has the opportunity to work with an employer on a real world business problem, not only are they exposed to career paths and industries that they may not have been aware of, but they also have the ability to develop their soft skills, those durable employability skills that are so important to employers that they might not be getting the chance to develop while sitting in the classroom. We also like these types of experiences because it can let students and learners know what they're not interested in. Doing a project in an industry or on a topic that a learner is like, oh my gosh, I actually hated that, is just as valuable really as them doing a project in an area that they have great interest in. Eliminating industries and fields and jobs is also a great tool for students to have. Moving on, I wanted to talk a little bit about how we're setting up EPIC and those EPIC clearinghouses or host organizations, which we would, invite you to have a conversation with us after this to see how you might fit into the EPIC network. So what we're doing and what we've done is we're standing up these clearinghouses or host organizations across the country. A clearinghouse can be any type of employer-facing organization. So it can be a state or local chamber of commerce, an economic development group, or some type of nonprofit. And the clearinghouse or host organization will be running EPIC challenges in their communities. And the clearinghouses are, their responsibilities are recruiting the employers in your community who will provide a real-world messy problem for learners to work through. And then you'll also recruit the education organizations who will be providing the learners, high school students, community college students, university students, who will be forming teams to work on these challenges from the employers. As I said, we're deep into year one and running challenges for this first year of EPIC. And here you can see the 9 clearinghouse partners that we are currently working with. So you'll see there is a mix of kind of smaller local chambers like the York County Regional Chamber of Commerce in Rock Hill, South Carolina, bigger regional chambers like the Phoenix Chamber Foundation. And then we have some economic development groups, some business associations, and then some nonprofit groups. Boys and Girls Club of America is one of our partners. Obviously, they're a very large nonprofit. But this sort of just gives you the rundown of the types of organizations we're working with in this first year and the types of organizations we are looking to recruit for year 2 and 3 of EPIC. And then I wanted to talk about a little bit about sort of what the EPIC challenges look like. So what those challenges that the employers are providing, kind of how those are framed out. And really, when we think about EPIC, the name of the game for us is flexibility. So we are flexible in the type of employer that you might recruit to provide these challenges. And we're flexible in terms of what these challenges look like. So your employer partner, it could be, a nonprofit group or a nonprofit employer. It could be a large Fortune 100 employer. It could be a government agency. So we're really flexible in what the employer looks like. And then also, flexible in what the challenge looks like. Maybe the employer is providing a PR challenge that they're facing, or a supply chain challenge, or an IT or cybersecurity challenge. So we're really flexible on what these employers look like and what the challenges look like. And then general guidelines for how these challenges are set up is that in this pilot year, in any given year, we would ask that each clearinghouse stands up 2 different challenges. One challenge for high school students, and then another second challenge for post-secondary students. And that each of these challenges would have 2 teams of 5 learners working on the challenge. So that would be 10 students per challenge, 20 students per clearinghouse. And we've envisioned, and this is sort of how it's shaken out over this first year, is that each of the challenges would take place over about a 4 to 8 week period. So These aren't particularly long or cumbersome challenges. They're sort of shorter in nature, which, we feel is a little bit more attainable and manageable for both the education partners and the students, as well as the employers who are working with the students. Next, I want to talk about that shared infrastructure that we talked about. And by that, I mean the technology platform that we are running EPIC off. So the Chamber Foundation formed an important partnership with an organization called Ripen. And Ripen is a highly regarded experiential learning platform that has deep expertise in work-based learning. So Ripen is not only providing the technology platform for EPIC, but they've also created individualized online portals for each of our EPIC clearinghouses. So those portals, that's where clearinghouse will host the challenges, and it allows the employer partners and the teams of learners to communicate with each other. On the Ripen platform, messages can be sent between the employer and the learners, feedback can be given, and solutions can be delivered, surveys can be administered, video meetings can be initiated, and the digital badges that I'll get to next can be awarded and shared. And this digital platform, this tech platform, it's really allowing us to achieve one of our key objectives for EPIC, in that it allows greater diversity in learners who are included in these challenges. The platform really removes the need for exclusively place-based challenges, and allows students to complete the challenge fully remotely if that's necessary or desired. It removes barriers from first who might face difficulty traveling to an employer's office for sessions or meetings, and it allows us to include students from rural communities who might not have proximity to employers that are hosting the challenges. And then next, I want to talk a little bit about the digital badge, or the that we will be awarding for completion of EPIC challenges. It's really one of the most exciting components of EPIC for us, but every learner who successfully completes an EPIC challenge will receive a digital badge from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. As I mentioned, each EPIC challenge will be and is unique, representing a range of disciplines and industries and skills. But really the common thread that goes through each of the EPIC challenges are those soft skills that the learners will obtain by participating in a challenge. And this digital badge that we'll be awarding, it aligns with the America Succeeds Durable Skills Framework, which really just represents the key soft skills that employers are looking for. So EPIC is really helping the learners practice the durable professional skills that they need to thrive in a rapidly changing workplace. And the EPIC badge highlights skills such as communication and time management, professionalism, teamwork, creativity, critical thinking. And our hope is that as EPIC scales and as more and more of these challenges are taking place throughout the country, that a digital badge from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation will really signal to future employers or future colleges or universities that a student has really worked through these soft skills and obtained these soft skills that are so necessary for employment. I'm really quickly going to go through just a couple EPIC illustrations so you can sort of see the ecosystem and network that we're building. Here on the left, you'll see the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. And then next to it is that shared technology infrastructure, which is provided by Ripen. And then here you'll see the Chamber Foundation and Ripen building that network around it of the clearinghouses or the host organizations for EPIC. And just a reminder, these clearinghouses can really be any type of employer-facing organization. And then from here, you'll see the clearinghouse recruiting secondary schools, post-sec to build out these challenges and launch these challenges in their respective communities. And here you'll see the teams of learners from the secondary institutions, as well as the colleges, post-secondary universities, community colleges. And then this slide just really represents, what EPIC looks like at scale. Our hope is that after this pilot, we can work towards having hundreds of chambers and business associations and employer-facing organizations standing up EPIC within their community and just providing thousands and thousands of challenges for learners each year. And then just a couple of reminders about what makes EPIC unique. It's multi-industry, as I mentioned. We are open to the types of employers that are providing these challenges. It's also authentic. Our goal is that the challenges that the employers are providing are real, authentic, messy challenges that these employers are actually facing on a day-to-day basis and need help with. And the students can provide some unique perspectives that they, might not have access to typically. And also, the framework and infrastructure that we've built around EPIC will allow us to scale it post-pilot program. EPIC also expands the reach and equity of project-based learning, and it's flexible in design. And then finally, the Ripen technology platform allows us to have these challenges be both remote and place-based or some sort of hybrid of those two. The challenges are stackable, meaning that the students can, do multiple challenges, over, their academic career, or, maybe even going into their professional career if we open this up to the workforce and have companies actually one day provide these opportunities for their workers. And then they're also credentialed. So as I mentioned, every learner who goes through EPIC will receive a digital badge from the Chamber Foundation. So just in closing, my ask of you is to, consider how your chamber or association might partner with us and serve as an EPIC clearinghouse or a host organization. So you can, start thinking about what employer partners you might recruit to work with you on this, and what education partners in your community you could tap to provide the learners. And I really welcome, I've provided my email address. I know Cindy will circulate these slides after. I really welcome just setting up one-on-one conversations with you to talk about what a partnership might look like. So that is an overview of EPIC. So it looks like we do have some time left for questions. So I'm going to stop my share. That works.
Very good. So we will open it up to questions if anyone has questions. Change this. I know I have a couple. So this one is for Sarah in particular. So like the companies that you have that are taking part in it now look like they're pretty big organizations. And so we're pretty small chambers.
Yeah.
So in order to scale this to be a little bit manageable for us, what hopefully this sounds right. So how many employers would a particular clearinghouse or host be responsible for? Like how many of these particular challenges would you have going at one time, just to make sure? Because some of our chambers are staffed by 1 or 2 people. Yeah, we want to make sure that, there's enough bandwidth, and how can we manage that, but still be able to participate?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the clearinghouses that we have now sort of span, really big organizations like the Boys and Girls Clubs of America, and then much smaller chambers of commerce like the York County Regional Chamber of Commerce in Rock Hill, South Carolina. Typically, each of the clearinghouses is responsible for recruiting 2 employer partners. And those employer partners, they certainly do not have to be big. Some of our partners are actually working with pretty small companies in their communities. Some of the, for example, our team out in San Diego, one of their employer partners is actually the city of San Diego. So you can think about the employer partnership as that pool you're pulling from is very broadly. It absolutely necessarily have to be a big company. And then in terms of the bandwidth for managing the challenges, clearinghouse. So Dan, if the Orville Chamber wanted to run EPIC in Orville, you would be responsible for recruiting 2 companies and probably two education partners to provide the teams. But the Chamber Foundation and Ripen will provide a lot of support as you get those challenges off the ground. So your role would sort of be overseeing those challenges and, helping guide the employer in building a challenge, helping guide the education partner in building out the teams. But I would say that the lion's share of the work is kind of on the employer and the education partners, and you're kind of in the recruitment mode and overseeing with our assistants and Ripen's assistants.
So I have a couple questions. First for you, kind of following up on that. So we've got a couple of programs already in existence. Does this have to be a standalone program, or can it be within? For instance, we have a leadership program. That probably wouldn't be because you're needing kids in school, it sounds like, for this program.
Yeah.
But we also have something called Envision Your Future, which in this case, it's a program that we have for 9th and 10th graders to get them to think about life and
Yeah.
where they're going. But I could see this potentially being part of that program, if that would be okay to be part of a big, I guess, is what I'm asking there.
Yes, you can definitely integrate it into a program that you've already stood up. And education partners can also integrate it into a class that, you know, might be focused on entrepreneurship or something like that. So we can to integrate it into something that you already have. And oftentimes that's easier because then you'd probably already have the pool of learners to pull from and probably have some employers in mind to work with that cohort of students.
And also, so that's being practical, a cost factor for both of these kind of programs. Like I'm assuming to go through the academy, TPM Academy, there's a typical kind of cost to go through this. I'm assuming you're utilizing certain tech for the Epic, that there's got to be some like base costs that are involved with this. Just I'm being practical because again, we're talking about smaller chambers. Sometimes that can be instantly an issue. So I throw that out to both of you.
Nikki, do you want to go first on TPM since you mentioned that first?
Sure. Yeah. So for TPM, our curriculum and all of our resources, they're free and available online to the public. They were philanthropic dollars and they will continue to be free as long as possible. But the actual training component of it, that does have a cost associated with it. So we have several different ways in which you can learn it. We do have our online learning platform, which Cindy alluded to, called TPM CoLab. You're familiar with the Canvas, Blackboard, etc. Same concept. It's an so you can take the asynchronous version, so that's our self-paced TPM Academy. You'll go through the modules on your own. You take the summative assessment, you can get your digital badge. Be recognized as a talent supply chain manager. That's $2,000. That also includes your first year of membership to the TPM National Learning Network, which is our professional peer-to-peer network of practitioners. Then you want to put in kind of our hybrid version of versions to do kind of the thing on your own. And you would participate in 8 2.5-hour live learning sessions, the academy at the same time. That's necessary practice in the field. And then you would have an expert. So another practitioner would come in for each of those sessions too, share their experience on the specific strategy that you're talking about and get the opportunity to kind of get feedback on application as you're going through it. That one's $2,500. The option is what we call our customized academies. And that would be kind of like what we did in Ohio a few years ago, where we come into a community. We teach in person, usually 3 to 4 times, 2 days each, over about 6 to 9 months for roughly 25 to 35 people. That's your choice. And that runs about $110K.
And as for Epic, actually during this first year, the 3-year program, it's actually free of cost for all our clearinghouse partners. So the Chamber Foundation, through the philanthropic grants we got from ASA and Walton Family Foundation, we are able to cover the costs of the Ripen platform, as well as the digital badge, the credentialing. Obviously you would have to dedicate your staff time, so you would have to account for that. But I will say that we, certain groups have raised their hand and said, can you provide a small stipend to our chamber so we can do this work? And we've been able to do that on a case-by-case basis. In the future, though, our hope is that the clearinghouses will be self-sustaining, and after you get these challenges off the ground over 2 or 3 years, that eventually the employer partners will want to pay in to this partnership and help offset the cost of the technology. So for now.
Yeah, one more, and then I'm gonna let other people ask, I promise. I'm not getting the questions. But work-based learning is a big thing in Ohio right now. I know our career centers are really being pressured to get so much. So would this count? Because they're all about their hours. They have to get so many hours of their kids in work-based learning right now. So would this count towards that and what the state of Ohio is demanding of some of these career centers, or all of them?
I think I don't totally know the answer to that. It might depend on if they need some sort of, if we would need to be accredited by the state of Ohio, which we're not, or I don't know if they could treat it on a case-by-case basis and you could show them what the students are doing and they could evaluate if that would count towards that. So I can get, I can get back to you on that. I'm not quite certain of the answer for that.
Yeah, I've got a kid just working with the chamber now, and he just does video projects for us. And then I fill out paperwork, and then those hours.
Oh, then I would think it
But
would
that's
have
a
been.
very direct, it's almost like an internship, but they don't like to use it.
Right, right.
Is it using that word? Okay, very good.
Yeah, you could have the employer or you could be the intermediary to provide that documentation of the project-based or work-based learning that had been taken,
I saw there was one question in the chat. What does the time commitment look like on the part of the people taking part on the teams? I'm not sure if that, Doug, if you mean the employers or the learners, like the
more on the student side of that.
Okay.
Hey, there's my camera.
employers or the learners, like the students.
Yeah, more on the student side of that.
Okay.
Hey, there's my camera. The student side.
It depends on how the education partner wants to set it up, but we're thinking typically it's looking like 8 to 10 hours per week for the duration of the challenge.
Okay, and I forget how long how many challenges.
It can be, we've had some partners do a 2-week challenge, and then we've had some partners do a whole semester challenge, but we were kind of thinking between the 4 to 8 weeks is sort of the spot.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
We are up against that 12 o'clock time, so I didn't want to go over too far, but I wanted to thank Sarah again and Nikki again for coming on and talking about these really great programs. These are things we don't think about. And so that's very exciting. So I'm going to go ahead and start.